According to his own description, my guest today builds lots of random things and tries to teach other developers too. Austin Griffith works for the Ethereum Foundation, and he focuses on developer onboarding, mentoring, and tooling. Austin, welcome to the channel. It's a pleasure to have you here and see you after Denver.
We're all healed up and back to normal after ETH Denver. We're feeling less sick and less runny nosed. Thank you for having me. Cool introduction. I do just try to build lots of things and then teach other people how to build those things.
Maybe as a first question, you tell us a bit about how you first got introduced to the blockchain space and when was that?
It was like, so during 2017, I think I was playing around with like Docker and infrastructure and code kind of nerd stuff. And I went down that rabbit hole and I missed Ethereum for a while. And then when I discovered smart contracts and running apps on blockchain and how like decentralized apps are different, I just fell in love with Ethereum and fell in love with writing smart contracts and building fun things on blockchain. I built like a couple weird little games. I built a couple little tools. So I kind of like had an early kind of tinkering around with blockchain that was more like, wow, it's really hard to build in the space. How can I make this better? How can I build better tools? How can I make it more fun? That kind of stuff. So that's what kind of like projected me into the space. Curiosity and building.
I had a look at your website and your projects, and I'll make sure to cover the projects you've been working on. But before going there, what is something that you're working on right now or you're planning to work in the future that you're particularly enthusiastic about?
Speedrunethereum.com is like it's a curriculum where someone can learn. It takes you through, it's tutorials to take you through the tooling, but it's basically an on-ramp for Web2 developers to learn about Web3. If you're a decent Web2 developer, you can go speedrun Ethereum and learn Web3. And then on top of that is like the buildguild.com is kind of an incentivization layer on top of that, where I'm streaming ETH to a bunch of builders to build cool things with Scaffold ETH and to build kind of public goodsy kind of things, build things that are good for the ecosystem, build tutorials, build prototypes. So kind of like the things that I'm most excited about now are like me empowering other developers, not particularly the weird things I'm building anymore.
So you mentioned some of your projects, but I know you have a lot of them. So I'm going to mention a couple. So you mentioned Scaffold ETH, Speedrun Ethereum, NiftyInk, and a lot more. Maybe you choose one or two of your favorite ones and walk us a bit more into details about what they do and how people can benefit by interacting with them.
So NiftyInk is built with Scaffold ETH. So it's an NFT platform that runs on a side chain, but upgrades to mainnet. And it's meant to show off really good onboarding for artists. The way it works is it uses burner wallets and meta transactions, which are super weird. Like it's like heady blockchain stuff, but what that does is abstract away the blockchain for the user. So you can like just have a tablet, right? Any old tablet that you have, and you can open up Safari and you can go to nifty.inc. And if you go to nifty.inc, you should be prompted with basically an NFT website where you can draw. So you can go to craete and you can draw something and you know nothing about crypto. You're just drawing something cool. It puts that drawing into IPFS and then mints it into an NFT. And you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to have an account. It basically generates an account for you and uses that account to sort of sign the art that you've created. And you sort of create this identity bottom up of an artist. And without knowing anything about blockchain, you can mint an NFT, you can put it on sale. You can even earn XDAI, or now Gnosis chain is what it's on. So you can earn funds before ever understanding a 12-word seed phrase. And then it's like, oh, whoa, I have $100 in this seed phrase. I better learn how to protect it. So it kind of swaps the mental model of onboarding, where instead of here's this complicated 12-word seed phrase you need to learn first before you can do anything. It's more like, come on in, draw something cool, make something that this little artist ecosystem is interested in, and you'll be rewarded. And if you get rewarded, then you'll be incentivized to learn how to onboard and learn the 12-word seed phrasey stuff kind of afterwards. So that's NiftyInk. It's sort of like a fun little art platform. It does upgrade to mainnet. Like you can take a NiftyInk all the way to mainnet, but it's like $120 or something. So it's better over there on the side chain. But that was built with Scaffold, an example app that you can use Scaffold ETH to build a production level application and also show off, fun onboarding and stuff like that.
That's brilliant. Basically, building NFTs without knowing you're doing that. I love it. So you talked a bit about the projects you're doing, but I know you also work for the Ethereum Foundation. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would love to work for Ethereum Foundation and are curious about how a typical workday would look for you working for Ethereum Foundation.
So I like to say even less that I work for the Ethereum Foundation and that I'm like supported by the Ethereum Foundation. Basically, I think the Ethereum Foundation has confidence in what I'm doing, and they're kind of very light touch, just enabling me to continue building and empowering other developers. So I'm kind of building. So Build Guild V3 is coming out soon at buildguild.com. And there will be some support from the EF for builders. But so there's kind of, you asked the question of like what the typical day is. There's not like a 9 to 5 here. I'm and kind of on the other side of that, I'm working all the time. I'm always at my desk, or I'm always on Telegram, like working with builders, mentoring, making sure everything like with the tool is working. So my day-to-day looks like, I don't know, probably like a lazy CEO. Like I don't do like hardcore CEO stuff, but I do like management and kind of like getting other people enabled to build really cool things. But I'm also building a little bit along the way. But the Ethereum Foundation, really, I have very little affiliation or understanding of what like happens. The Ethereum Foundation is about like kind of subtractive, minimalistically, like applying pressure where it needs to and helping out in places that can like make the ecosystem grow better. But really, they're just supporting me to do my thing of like bringing on developers, making sure the tooling is good, and then empowering developers. And what a developer's day looks like that works with me at the Build Guild is basically like, you can work on this on nights and weekends, you can be async, like whatever you got to do. You can work for 3 or 4 different DAOs at once. But when you do something that benefits Scaffold ETH or Build Guild, you can get in and withdraw ETH from your stream. And it's basically this asynchronous, like nice smart contract stream where when you do work, you price it and you withdraw some ETH. And it's my job just to keep those ETH streams filled up so everybody has stuff to withdraw from if they are doing work that's supporting it. But like overall, all of these work days are very wherever you are, whenever you can work, whenever you can put in time. Like if you're providing value for the ecosystem, like I want to reward you for that.
You basically just introduced my next question. So you mentioned Build Guild, a project for developer coordination. And I know a very interesting concept around the Build Guild is Quadratic Funding, a term coined by Kevin Owaki from Gitcoin. Can you tell us more about how the project works, and also what is Quadratic Funding? How does it work?
Cool. Yeah. So Build Guild is sort of like an incentivization layer where I'm mostly YOLOing my own ETH, but also like the EF and other folks are starting to support me. So the structure of the Build Guild is mainly like there's a DAO at the top that votes to send money to a bunch of smart contracts, and all those smart contracts represent each builder, and each builder can withdraw from the smart contract. But so that's like the structure of the Build Guild. I think the question there is kind of leaning more toward quadratic funding and what is quadratic funding. And yeah, so I think I learned about quadratic funding from the paper from Vitalik and Glenn Weil. And they're talking, it was like a radical markets paper. And they're talking about how, and really like Ethereum is really good at trying out these radical markets because we can write a quick few rules and a couple smart contracts and like create a new financial mechanism. So the mechanism here is you have lots of people vote, and as long as you have decent civil resistance, you can tell from the pool of folks, you get a lot of signal on what is kind of like the community favorite, or you understand people put their money where their mouth is, and then you can, it's like the sum of it's like the square of the sum of the square roots or something like that. You take the square root, you add all of those up, and then you look at your cut of that. It's a way to if the community supports a certain project, let's say 10 people give $1, that's far more valuable than if one person gives $10. Even though it's the same amount donated, it's that community signal and the fact that lots of people gave a little bit versus one person gave a lot. And that's kind of the heart of the mechanism is finding the things that the community in general supports by letting a lot of people signal toward things, and then have a matching fund that says, okay, the community signaled toward these projects. Let's take a big amount of money and drop them to those projects using that community signal. So hopefully, like Kevin Owaki would be able to use his low voice and explain a much more, much more interesting way of explaining it. But from my side of view, that's where it is. It's like a way to get community signal towards what are cool things that maybe the top wouldn't be able to figure out who to fund, but the community knows, and finding the community signal and finding what's important to people, and then funding those things with matching funds.
Oh, so basically getting a better deal for the community than for big whales, I would say.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and like the big whales can come in and drop funds, but they don't want to spend a ton of time figuring out where to drop the funds. They just have funds and they want to support the community. But what they can do is let the community drop their tiny little bits of funds and then see who's getting what, and then figure out an algorithm to sort of drop the big whale funds to the most important ones that the community likes.
You mentioned briefly a DAO, and I know DAOs are one of the hot topics right now. Are you part of any DAOs? And if yes, which ones?
I think I'm like one of the highest delegates for the Gitcoin DAO. So I do some Gitcoin stuff. I propose stuff on Tally and Snapshot and do some governance stuff. Probably my more favorite DAO, even though I love Gitcoin DAO, of course, my more favorite DAO is the Build Guild DAO, which is a Wyoming LLC DAO. So it's an LLC. It's like a company. It can receive funds and it's going to get taxed and everything. But that's where money is flowing for people who donate to the Build Guild. And then the DAO basically votes to distribute all the funds to all the streams. So it's a far smaller, it's insignificant compared to Gitcoin DAO, but it's like a fun little area where we're playing around with, Wyoming LLCs and how that can be a DAO, and how a DAO can be an LLC, and how a DAO can kind of basically be a business that funds developers, right? We're paying a bunch of developers, but the far more interesting DAO and bigger DAO is probably Gitcoin DAO, and that they recently launched, 6 months ago now, launched their GTC token, and a lot is delegated to me for voting. And there's a ton of work streams and a lot of really interesting work going on there that the DAO is funding through proposals, which is just super cool to see. There's a forum, everyone posts on the forum and talks about what they think would be best. Then things bubble up and that goes to Snapshot, and we take like an off-chain signature and we kind of vote toward it. And then when it clears Snapshot, then it goes to Tally and we vote on chain, and then it actually runs the command to move the tokens into some work stream, which is like a multi-sig. And then usually that delegates to a baby multi-sig that sends out money to a whole bunch of developers. So it's like this whole really cool, like decentralized process of making this work. But in the end, developers are getting funded to build cool things within just a moonshot work stream. And there's lots of different work streams for Gitcoin DAO.
I think it's pretty safe to say that before all, you're a builder at heart. So since we're talking about DAOs, what tooling do you think are still missing out there when it comes to DAOs? You mentioned Snapshot, you mentioned Tally. These are around, this helps with DAOs, but still I think there are a lot of tooling that are missing. What do you think?
Yeah, you almost framed the question as if like, we've got most of it figured out and we're just filling in some of the last blanks. Like, not at all. It's the Wild West. Like the fact that we're using a forum and then a snapshot and then a tally, not just like a single product that does that, is like one obvious, like, why isn't there a single product? Honestly, like if we zoom out a little bit farther, the multi-sig is like a key component for all of these DAOs and for all of these apps, and for even just like there was a multi-sig like 4 steps down from the DAO that still needed to be decentralized, that like doesn't have great user experience, doesn't have a great UI. Sometimes the transaction service doesn't work. So there's like room just in simply disrupting the things that are like critical still. But all around that are all these other products that you can build. In the DAO tooling space in particular, I'm super excited about funding developers, finding ways to, again, like my little DAO, finding ways for a little DAO to fund a bunch of developers, or how even there could be a DAO deployed tomorrow that says we should build this thing, and then some developers should be able to join in, and that money should be like kind of a multi-sig where there are stakeholders that can vote on sending that money out to the people who complete those tasks, right? A very simple kind of like bounty with a results oracle multi-sig, like that probably exists, but it needs to exist, and it needs to exist more often. And we need to have like a whole bunch of different flavors of it, and it needs to be very forkable. So like multi-sigs, way to distribute funds to developers, things like the quadratic voting, and trying new like algorithms for how we weight different votes, right? Going back to like way old school, like a TCR, a token curated registry, used to be a buzzword a couple of years ago. And now it kind of starts to make a little bit more sense, but like, I think Vitalik hates like token voting. That like the gigabrains know like there are certain things we can't do and certain things we can do, and us cavemen down on the ground keep like trying different things, hoping one of them works. So lots of different tooling around DAOs and how DAOs pay people. I think DAO token like paying people to work for a DAO is a really interesting pain point right now. And we see people like kind of like Coordinate, Moonshot, like there's a ton of different products in the space that are just thinking about how we enable DAOs to pay, interact, do all the stuff they need to do, but still be, sufficiently decentralized.
Maybe we now go and talk a bit about how to onboard more developers. So in one of your videos, you say that after going through the speedrun Ethereum challenges, someone is able to get like any job in the space, but you're hoping that they would go for a different approach, and instead they will go out there and build their own things. What would you recommend to developers to start building on their own things, but at the same time to sustain themselves? What approach would you recommend?
It's tricky, right? It's tricky getting into the space. There's a big space. It's very noisy. A lot of people, a lot of identities. I think the key thing that helped me when I got started was just to tweet about it, like build something and show it off, build something and show it off, like get in a routine of just like shipping things to see how they resonate. I think before I got into the space, I spent a lot of time working on like this Oracle project, and I thought it was going to be this great impactful thing on the space. And I spent tons of time on it. And I thought about like, am I going to have like a token launch here? Like I thought seriously about, am I going to make $1 million by launching this thing? Right. And in the long run, like no one cared. No one needed that thing. It probably doesn't even like technologically work in a like game theory, like a sound game theory way. But I spent months on it and I poured my heart into it. And the problem there was I just wasn't doing it in public. I wasn't trying to see if this thing was going to be successful. I just assumed it would be successful. So I think that like the first step, other than just like get the syntax, understand how to build, speedrun Ethereum, understand the basics. But after you speedrun Ethereum, there's a lot of like, try to build your own multi-sig and release it and see how people use it. Try to build your own DEX and release it and see how people use it. It doesn't have to be on mainnet and have $1 million in it, right? You can throw it on a test net. You could throw it on a side chain. You could throw it on an L2. It can cost you $10. You can deploy a cool contract. A bunch of people can use it. Then you can get feedback and say, oh, like, that was a silly idea. That's not going to work. Or, wow, that really resonated. I didn't count on that thing resonating so much. Like, this is the direction I should go. Start building and showing things off. Funding in this space is tricky. I think that like again, they're so noisy, and there's a lot of people coming in that aren't going to provide value, that are just trying to get funding. And we have to be careful as funders, of that situation. But a lot of times it's like someone comes in, they want to learn, they start learning. I can tell they're learning, but they're also contributing back. I start streaming some ETH to them. That's in my little ecosystem. Like I can tell, like, wow, this person is like providing value. I want to make sure that they're getting rewarded for their value. But in others cases, like if you don't just run into me, you're going to run into all sorts of other different actors in the space. And I think some of the best entryways are probably just find a repo of a project that you're interested in. Like I'm running an ETH2 validator right here, right? Like who's writing this stuff? Like I should get into their GitHub, and I should look at the issues, and I should, oh, they have this issue with this JavaScript thing, I can jump in and fix that. You start like doing that kind of stuff, and you're going to get picked up by a lot of these organizations too. So if you speed run Ethereum, you should have the mental model and the ability to, and like a little profile that shows all the stuff that you've built, to like interview at places and probably get hired. But hopefully, like you said, you'll kind of find, oh, the ecosystem is missing this tool or this piece or this product. I'm going to go kind of build a prototype for that and show it off to people. And if people start using it, get in a loop, and all of a sudden you've got traction and funding and stuff like that. So building in public and iterating, I think, is my key. But there's a lot of subtleties there about like running into the right people and contributing to the right places. Find something you're good at and contribute. And hopefully the ecosystem does a good job of rewarding that.
This is great. This is great advice. Maybe now we zoom out a bit. What would be a prediction you see for the blockchain space that will have a great impact?
So it's interesting. We're seeing some like game theory play out at like the nation state level right now. And in the world, there's war in the world right now, and there's nuclear weapons, and there's a lot of things that seem like to us on this call, we have very little agency to fix those things. And I think that for the first time, we may have something that might do that with credible commitments on blockchains. If we think of that at a nation state level, and we think of coordination, not just between DAOs and paying developers, but we think of coordination in terms of nation states staking their weapons budget in a smart contract instead of building some weapons. And if any of those nation states doesn't play by the rules, instead of just getting kicked out of some little organization or whatever, they actually like lose their weapons budget, right? So in a weird way, and to give, pay respects to all the folks like Amin who have talked about like, it's not us versus them, it's all us, and we're failing to coordinate at a nation state level, and we need to find a way to coordinate. And this idea of on-chain credible commitments that goes beyond any nation state could possibly do that. But like, we're a long ways from a nerd in his office talking about funding DAOs to nation states participating on this platform. But that's something that I'm excited about in terms of like impact with the world and giving agency back to people. I think that this technology of decentralization and Web3 could usher that in. But that's like, again, I'm a low-level nerd. I'm just building fun tools. Someone else will do that, and I hope they do.
Hopefully, yeah. We're getting to the last question, a question that I like to ask everyone. Tell me, please, a name of a person you appreciate from the blockchain space and a project that you believe has great potential.
I'm all about like Iwaki's mission and working with Moonshot and kind of the higher level Gitcoin DAO stuff that he's working on. Nick over at ENS, Carl from Optimism, Jing Lang from Optimism, the whole Optimism team. Just put the whole Optimism team on a pedestal. They're amazing folks. I was on a call with Daniel from Arbitrum yesterday. The Polygon team, Sandeep and Polygon, the ZK Sync team. Like there's a lot of very exciting things happening at the L2 level, and those folks are really kind of like pioneering like what mainstream adoption could possibly look like and feel like, and that's a big area. Like Matt Condon and Jonathan Mann, like the Song a Day folks, the Fire Eyes dudes, there's so many awesome people in this space doing awesome things, like the MEV researchers, right? Like all the femboys on Twitter. Like there's so many people doing awesome things that are kind of anonymous and they're like really in the guts of the Solidity, like really innovating. Like those are all the people that like I look up to, right? I have so many heroes in the space that from first getting in, even like Chainlink dudes, the Graph, Yaniv at the Graph, and Nader over at the Graph, Patrick at Chainlink, and Steve and Sergey, early DAO people like all the Metacartel contributors, right? Peter Pan and Amin, Deacon doing early stuff. Man, there's so many so many good teams doing cool things. Gnosis Safe, right? The Gnosis Safe has product market fit. All these DAOs are using the Gnosis Safe. Stefan and crew over there. Just a lot of great folks in the space. Let's see. Shout out to Simona, who does all this like governance and kind of wrangling of cats sometimes, and also like so many onboarding and events and stuff like that. There's like a million people. If I tried to list everybody, I'm like 1/3 of the way through listing the people that are obvious, and it would take me a lot longer. But there's even like all the people on the edge and all the anon, addresses, and all the folks quietly working at the EF that are, really having a ton of impact in the space that we hardly know about.
And now the project. Let's not forget about the project.
Okay, so the projects are the L2s, right? We gotta shout out like the Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, Polygon, Gnosis Chain crew, just because they're bringing mainstream like build guild is building stuff on top of those for sure. Like of course I'm going to shout out and show my own stuff, but thinking of like projects in the space that are going to have the biggest impact in 2022 are these L2s that have given us this mainstream like a mainstream adoption like feel. Like if we think about mainstream adoption, like we need to have fast, quick transactions. We need to have things not break and not lose money and all those things. So between L2s and smart contract wallets, I think maybe not even shouting out a specific project, but a specific project will emerge in 2022 that does good multi-sigs on L2s, good, I don't know if it's even multi-sigs, but good apps that are built on L2 that mainstream audiences can use. Like companies will emerge this year that are going to take us to the next level.
Amazing. Austin, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to see you at the next conference.
Amsterdam, maybe, who knows? Yeah, we're setting up like a little hackathon for I want to do like a game hackathon where developers show up and deploy contracts, and I'll have like a game contract and they have to deploy a contract to talk to my contract. So look out for me in Amsterdam at DevConnect, and also just speedrun Ethereum. Key thing, speedrunethereum.com. If you are a developer, you know developers, go speedrun Ethereum.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.